Yeah.
Yeah, bro. Okay.
I
Well,
can.
yeah. Hi, everyone. So my name's Sam Manning, and hello from Cornwall. I'm the Woodland Trust project officer for the Rainforest Recovery project, which is Species Survival Fund funded, so DEFRA funded 18-month project from August 2024 through to December 2025. And from our perspective in the Woodland Trust Southwest team, this is really the first step in moving towards a vision of focusing a lot more on temperate rainforests down here, whereas we've traditionally been very focused on Devon as a geography and ancient woodlands, really. But we're now refocusing and starting to focus very specifically on temperate rainforests. Bit of a lag on the presentation. Okay. So this is what we're dealing with down here in terms of our rainforest zone. We think that about 75% of Devon and Cornwall were once covered in temperate rainforest. And our hyperoceanic zones are really kind of focused on the moorlands that we have here. So Exmoor, Dartmoor, Bodmin Moor, and then areas of West Penwith. But we've lost about 90% of our existing temperate rainforest since the Bronze Age. So really our focus is restoring what we have left by 2050. But as part of the Southwest Rainforest Alliance, which I'll talk a bit about later at the end of the presentation, we want to triple the amount of temperate rainforest in Devon and Cornwall by 2050. So the project that I'm on really has a people focus and then a much larger focus on restoration. So I'm just going to do a whistle-stop tour really through some of the stuff that we've been up to since August 2024. So we have quite a big program of events focusing on reaching people, but a sort of diverse range of audiences. So we've done 32 events since August 2024. We've reached about 934 participants. But of those, about 7 of them were specifically training days that were focused on either upskilling the general public in terms of lichen ID training, for example, or rapid rainforest assessment surveying. But we also focused on sort of the professional contracting and landowning sector in terms of bringing them on board and understanding what these habitats are and how specifically to manage them. And a lot of that is really been focused on the stuff that Gordon and Sabine and Bill have been talking about around modifying the existing temperate rainforest habitat so it's much more dynamic, much more open, and much healthier in terms of its ability to support lichen species. That focus on expanding it as and when the opportunities are there, but also around restoring the hydrology, which I'll talk a bit more about. We've also had quite a sort of innovative and new focus on digital media in terms of reaching different audiences. Last year, we created a 10-minute micro documentary around temperate rainforests with a professional film company that was really designed to meet people in the space of kind of the artistic film world. And that was a bit of an experiment to see if we could reach people in a different way. We submitted it to 4 or 5 different film festivals. It actually won the Cornwall Film Festival last year. And it's been nominated for 3 more, including the Smiley Charity Film Festival Awards, which I'd never heard of, but apparently is the biggest charity-focused film festival awards on Earth. And on Friday, rather bizarrely, I have to go to Greenwich to the O2 to a red carpet film festival awards event where that could potentially be winning it. So an experiment that's paid off, and it's quite an interesting way, I think, of reaching new audiences and bringing the message of temperate rainforest to the general public. We've also experimented with various different press releases. So there was a Guardian press release a month ago that reached about 23 million people around the different ecology that you get in temperate rainforests, obviously including lichens, but also the other species that you find, like the blue ground beetle and the white-tailed sea eagle. And that seemed to be very successful in terms of gaining traction. We've also just finished a project around using drones to do woodland creation at scale. And that was, I think, a bit of a tech story that really captured the imagination of people. So that went out on Friday and was picked up by the BBC and various other different organizations. But really what we found, the impact of this kind of stuff is penetrating onto social media. So it's amazing to see what happens when you put these stories out and they get picked up by other influencers that you collaborate with, for example, or just people pushing it out in an organic way. The other main area we're focusing on is volunteering. Student or young people have become a real focus for the Woodland Trust, and they are a notoriously difficult group to work with and get interested. But we now have weekly volunteer events running out of both Plymouth and Exeter University. We've done 21 volunteer days since October last year, and we've managed to deliver over 1,000 volunteer hours. We also work with our traditional volunteering base, which tend to be sort of older, retired, more skilled volunteers. And they worked with us over the winter, baselining about 170 hectares of intervention on our estate using the rapid rainforest assessment. So some really, really effective and large scale volunteering stuff. But for the students and the young people, we're really just trying to give them the broadest depth of experience in terms of engaging with temperate rainforest restoration as possible. So whether that's tree planting, surveying, removing non-native invasives, doing rewetting work, all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the people-focused aspects of the project. We have about 67 temperate rainforest sites in Devon and Cornwall. This project is funding around 700k of restoration works over 11 of those sites, so our kind of key and most important ones. That is mostly funding a lot of the work which we've already heard about, so removing non-native species, doing pause restoration, doing woodland creation. But a real focus that we have down in the southwest, which I think is quite a new thing, particularly in a lot of the national nature reserves, SSSIs that we work on, is restoring the hydrological landscape and seeing that, starting to really look at the damage that's been done to our hydrology. So in the State of Nature Report 2019, there's an amazing stat, or a mind-blowing stat really, that between 1840 and 1880, an area the size of Dartmoor was drained every single year in the UK, and in the 1970s, a similar area was drained. So we have a landscape which is denuded hydrologically, but has had a serious effect on our remaining rainforests, which, as we know, are water forests. The humidity and hydrology of them is absolutely essential for providing the conditions that lower plants need, but that also supports the function of the forest in general, but also protects us and will protect us from climate change as flooding becomes worse, as droughts become worse. The Environment Agency have done some modelling down on Dartmoor and Bodmin, and they predict that by 2080 we will have an 80% increase in peak rainfall. So there is a story here about not only increasing the humidity and restoring the humidity of our rainforest sites, but also safeguarding the people that live in these rainforest landscapes from the impact of climate change, which I think makes it much more tangible and much more effective in terms of reaching people where they are. This video, which I'm hoping will play, is an example of a rewetting project that we did in Yarner Wood, which was England's first national nature reserve. It was founded in 1952, and it just shows this is an example of a site that's really well managed in terms of its forestry elements. So it has very low amounts of non-native invasive species. It's quite a dynamic open habitat, but the hydrology element has never really been looked at, and so we did a project with the Environment Agency, £100,000 that sits outside of the Species Survival Fund, filling about 3 kilometres of the denuded, kind of incised watercourses with trees. So we achieved an opening up, an increase in light level, but also managed to grade all of these incised channels and instantly reconnect them with the floodplain. So we're getting amazing benefits around reducing flooding downstream. We're getting reduced sedimentation. It's holding more humidity in the landscape and increasing biodiversity. So as going forward, we're really starting to sort of scale up how we look at these or the size of the projects we do. That on the top right hand corner, you can see another site which is going to be funded through the project in August to reconnect about 2 hectares along a 750 metre long watercourse in the Avon Valley, a southern oceanic woodland, which should be a really exciting project. We've also, as I've mentioned, baselined a lot of our interventions at over 170 hectares, and we're now doing much more precise lichen surveying to get much more specific data on the species that we have in our woodlands in terms of lichens and lower plants. I've spent some time 2 years ago in the temperate rainforest of the Pacific Northwest, and one thing that really struck me about the way that they manage their temperate rainforest there is they see them in a much more holistic, hydrology focused perspective, and they focus everything around the keystone species of salmon, of the salmon species they have there. And they understand that 25% of the nutrient in the forests there are derived from the ocean, and they're brought in by the salmon, and that they form a real foundational bedrock in terms of the food web of those rainforest ecosystems. So another thing we're trying to do is as Bill kind of mentioned, unblur the lines between woodland habitats and the freshwater and even marine habitats in our rainforest. We're working a lot more closely with other specialist organizations like the West Country Woodlands Trust, who are helping us baseline survey our salmon species populations and help us understand how to better manage our water environment in tandem with our forest environment to get those biodiversity benefits. This is just a few examples of some other projects we've been doing. So the top two are at the Avon Valley Woods in South Devon. So that's a 500-meter stretch of tributary of the Avon River, where we've reversed incision of a very sort of dry floodplain and turned a 1 meter effectively gutter in a wider farming environment into a 20-meter wide wetland by just reinstating that biogenic layer of dead wood that has been produced as a byproduct of our ancient woodland restoration and temperate rainforest restoration activities. And those sticks you can see are willow staves. So that's another key aspect of this rewetting, is reintroducing willow as a biogenic species. It's only we've surveyed a lot of our kind of riverine woodlands, and willow is only present in about 10% as 10% of the land cover. So we think it's been selectively removed in favour of more productive coppiceable species in the past. So really we're just bringing back those layers that have been removed, and you instantly start to see this rewetting. We also call this making a site beaver ready. So we're trying to sort of sell the beaver as a temperate rainforest ecosystem engineer in terms of its ability to re-wet and increase the humidity of sites. So a lot of what we're doing here is also priming the sites for the eventual reintroduction of beavers, which, as many of you will know, has now been made possible in England due to the legalisation of all catchment release licenses. But we're not just really doing this rewetting work to try and make these habitats better, but actually just to protect them from climate change again. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see an upland oak woodland on Dartmoor, which has been stood in that state really for about 1,000 years. In 2022, we had a drought that was so severe that all of that brown area of oak died standing, which is something we'd never seen happen in the landscape before. So really this rewetting work is also about protecting the existing tree stock that we have. And then another sort of developing area of work is priming new temperate rainforest sites before they're created, before they're planted, for humidity. Almost every single farming or agricultural landscape site I work on is absolutely riddled underground with subsurface land drainage, be that ditches or whether that be sort of layers of archaeological different kinds of pipes. So this was a site that we worked on before we planted it, and underneath, about 4 to 5 feet down, we found 6-inch plastic pipes that was effectively stenting water underneath the site and reducing its ability to hold water, to hold humidity, or to act as any kind of flood mitigation sink, really. But on a lot of sites I work on, you could have anything from plastic tubes, plastic pipes, to clay pipes, to slate drains that predate the Industrial Revolution. And I think this is beginning to become a developing best practice in terms of creating new temperate rainforests, is effectively sorting out the plumbing, pump priming them with humidity before you plant them. Some of the wider work, which is kind of not really delivered directly by the project, but is kind of associated with our temperate rainforests, we have something called Wood and Moor, which my colleague Dave Rickwood in the top hand corner has pioneered. That's a partnership with Southwest Water, which uses a series of portable wood miser sawmills to turn low-grade timber that is very, very inaccessible into leaky dams, which we then resell to the peatland projects up on the moor. So there's a really nice cyclic carbon cycle story there around restoring our ancient temperate rainforests from coniferized plantations, but using that timber as a byproduct, unlocking that as a byproduct for peatland restoration up on the moor, which hopefully eventually can become part of that temperate rainforest landscape. We also reintroduced pine marten last year to Dartmoor, which has been extinct for over 150 years. So another keystone species of the temperate rainforest ecology brought back, which is brilliant. Gordon was talking about the thermal deer survey. So we're doing something very similar to that with drones down here. We've surveyed a 5,000 hectare area over a landscape recovery area down here. And we've also just released a report called Dartmoor's Forest Futures, which was on the BBC this week. Again, looking at that timber resource to try and bring the forestry sector on board with this movement of moving towards more broadleaf temperate rainforest restoration by unlocking our small-scale timber markets. Another big aspect of this is our temperate rainforest research trials. So we're aware that in order to reach that goal of tripling temperate rainforest by 2050, we need better science on how to best create these woodlands. It may be that doing closed canopy 1,600 stems a hectare woodlands are not going to be the most effective way of encouraging lichen communities in the fastest way possible. So we're studying whether closed canopy versus open canopy versus natural regeneration or individual trees are actually a better way long term to creating these woodlands. But also we need sort of new technologies to be able to scale this stuff faster. So in January, we trialed drones to begin effectively assisting natural regeneration in upland sites. So we're hopefully going to start seeing the results of that trial. And we now have a film online which came out on Friday on our YouTube channel if you're interested in that more. Interestingly, completely in a silo without us knowing, our team at Loch Arkaig also trialed this at exactly the same time. But it's only really become possible to do this in the last year because a year ago it was actually illegal to drop anything from a drone. Another big strand of our work is outreach with landowners, and this is really the team I sit in. And so we're trying to reach out to landowners with funded offers through the Species Survival Fund, either to facilitate woodland creation, to facilitate surveying and restoration of their woodlands, but also we're reaching out to farmers with agroforestry offers, so we can start increasing tree cover in the landscape and create more wood pasture in our farming landscape without necessarily impacting livestock farming yield, and in some cases actually increasing the yield and increasing its resilience to climate change. We've done 19 different woodland schemes this winter, that's totaled about 21 hectares. One of those was the biggest woodland creation on Dartmoor in 25 years. So we're really starting to see an increase in woodland creation through the temperate rainforest kind of narrative. And we've also surveyed about 750 hectares of landowners' ancient woodland temperate rainforest off of our estate as well. And another really kind of interesting thing that I've been involved with is trying to reintroduce the white-tailed sea eagle. So that's been extinct from the southwest since about the 1700s. We're going to be reintroducing it to Exmoor this year and hopefully South Cornwall next year. But that's another species that I kind of see as one of these temperate rainforest ecosystem engineers that is not necessarily endemic to the temperate rainforest, but is part of that story of supporting the health of them. And they feed in the ocean and nest in the rainforest, which I think is also quite a nice story because effectively these are ocean forests. They are forests that exist because of their proximity to the ocean, which I find is quite an interesting story or narrative arc that helps people engage with them quite strongly. So we're kind of lagging behind down here in terms of our Rainforest Alliance. We've really followed and been inspired by Gordon's work and the Scottish Rainforest Alliance work. We formed our alliance, the Southwest Rainforest Alliance, I think 3 or 4 years ago. We've since had a series of events, including a Temperate Rainforest conference at Plymouth University, which drew in a lot of interest from academics, but also the general public. We had a great scientist come over who's kind of a renowned world expert on temperate rainforest called Dominic Della Sala, who gave us some really brilliant insights and has helped drive forward a lot of different conversations. But the key bit of work around the rainforest going forward is our State of the Southwest Rainforest report, which will be the last one to be published of the current alliances, which should again give us the framework to start understanding where we are and how we move forward. But this is a piece of interactive mapping that's already online and is available, which is helping us to prioritize or triage where we need to focus our efforts. So that's where are the wettest areas, where are the existing temperate rainforests, where are our bio indicators or our important plant areas. And you can see there are some really clear areas coming out from that, i.e. Dartmoor and its wooded valleys, Bodmin and its wooded valleys, and our coastal areas. So moving forward with the Alliance, really it's about the next iteration of that, which will be much more focused on climate change and climate modelling, and really trying to tell the story of where are our temperate rainforests going to be most resilient as the climate changes. And this is another piece of work that Plymouth University are working on, which I think is really, really interesting, really exciting, and in my mind could really help bring the rest of the country into the rainforest narrative. This is called the Atlantic Rainforest Shield concept, and it's based on the idea that rainforests create their own rain in the same way that tropical rainforests do. And they're modelling at what scale we need to restore our temperate rainforests in terms of the area they cover before they start producing enough rain in summer to actually mitigate the effects of climate change drought on our eastern farmlands, which I think is a really exciting, holistic way of looking at the ecozone and selling the concept of temperate rainforests from a functional perspective to people about how powerful they could be if we invest the time in and money in restoring them. So on the left is our rainforest film that I talked about, which is called Recovering the Rainforest, and on the right is our drone seeding film. So there's a couple of QR codes if you wanted to follow those to our YouTube. But otherwise, thank you very much for having me.